said, I want you to know that David Thompson and I have enjoyed every second being the artistic directors.
So you say.
And I will let David get going. Okay, we're running late.
Yeah, labor of love. Hi, David Thompson here, one of the co-hooligans that started to help work on this thing. We want to thank a lot of people, and I got a list. Okay. We definitely want to thank all the volunteers, if we know your name or not, right? And then a special thanks to Renee Williams and her son Nathan Hollander. They were in charge of the green room. Thank y'all so much. Vivian Rutherford for the ice cream social and the master class. All the MCs, the facilitators, all y'all. And definitely the festival committee.
All right. What I'm going to do is introduce one teller at a time. And my gift to each teller is a stone. You know, stories tap us on the shoulders, as Joel was telling us. Well, stones tap me on the shoulder too, and I'm a collector of stones. And this particular heart, since our theme is storytelling connects our hearts and our minds, and you can tell that through all the stories that you've heard with everyone. And so I will connect 3 words with each teller. Lyn Ford, soul-stirring, genuine, warm. How about a hand for Lyn Ford? Lyn, this stone has your name written all over it. It's your heart.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for abiding with me. I hope we feel like family now. I met someone in the back of the room. We think we might be distant cousins with ties in Alabama to the Macklin family. Sandra's the only person that I've met in several years whose maiden name is spelled M-A-C-L-I-N, not M-A-C-K-L-I-N. Like my paternal grandmother's maiden name, M-A-C-L-I-N. The branches spread far. I was going to tell you a folk tale, and then I changed my mind. Because a friend of mine sent me an email. Now, I haven't talked to her yet, so I don't know if she was referring to her almost 4-year-old grandson, or something that she found on the internet. But she said, the latest, a child's variant of the Lord's Prayer. And her grandson has already decided he wants to be a preacher. And he goes around healing everybody. You glare at him, he puts his hand out, he says, heal, and walks away. You fuss at him, he looks at you, he says, you need Jesus. Heal, and he walks away. So I haven't had a chance to talk to Linda. I don't know whether she found this or she heard it, but it's all right because God laughs. And grandmas protect their little ones, sometimes from their parents. The prayer said, Our Father, who is art in heaven, Hamnet be thy name. And I don't remember everything that was in between, but it said, and lead us not into Penn Station, but deliver us from email. Amen. So I have to talk to her about that, but I can relate. I'm sure if he said it, Grandma will be there to protect him. My grandma gave this information back to me before she passed on. She said when I was 5 years old, she took me with her to the rededication of the Second Baptist Church. Now, the rule in our family was you had to go to church somewhere. They didn't care which kin you went with, but you had to go to church somewhere. My pop-pops once said, "We love you, but you need to know you are not the center of the universe." And it was the Sunday that I was going to go with Grandma Jo to the Second Baptist Church. And my mother had dressed me up real pretty. She liked to show me off, but she was playing the piano at the Methodist church, so she wasn't there. And my mother had bought me something that she thought would just look so cute. And I don't know why she was worried about it looking so cute when nobody was supposed to see a pair of lacy panties. And I was a very skinny child in those days. I tell folks I have made up for it since then. And so the panties didn't fit quite right. There was a lot of space in the back and a lot of space in the front. And the elastic was too tight and had crinkly lace all around it. So I'd been walking like a cowboy, trying to keep it from scratching. And the elastic around the waist was too tight, and I wanted to itch at places that you're not allowed to scratch in church. And they just weren't comfortable at all. I didn't know that I have a reaction to nylon and elastic at that time. And it was getting worse and worse, and I'm trying to be polite, and I'm moving all around in the seat, and Grandma Jo is patting me on my shoulder, trying to get me to sit still until the music started at a certain part of this wonderful occasion. And folks started getting up and feeling the spirit. And folks were stomping in time with the music. And the music was going wild. And the preacher was dancing behind the pulpit. And other folks were running up and down the aisles shouting. And Grandma Jo was standing up. So I stood up. And I looked at what everybody else was doing. And Grandma Jo said, I started wiggling and jumping and stomping and dancing and turning and twisting, and I danced right out of my drawers. Those things hit the floor, and with unbelievable grace, Grandma Jo reached into her big purse. She pulled out a hanky. She raised her hand into the air. She shouted, "Hallelujah!" and threw that handkerchief down on top of those panties. And she acted like she dropped that hanky, reached down to pick it up. You know what else she was picking up. Put both of them in her purse. And then she took my hand and started moving out to the aisle. And folks weren't paying a bit of attention. They were getting happy. They were feeling good. And as we walked down the aisle, my grandma stopped and whispered something to the usher. And the usher nodded her head. And we went a certain way, and there were stairs, and we went downstairs to the bathroom. And when we got there, Grandma started to hand me those panties. And I knew I was in trouble. But then she said, wait, sit down, go. I said, I don't have to go. Go. Sit down, do something. But Grandma, I don't have to go. I told the usher you needed to use the bathroom, and you're not going to make a liar out of me in church. You sit down, you go, do something. So I sat down, and I was there a while, but finally something happened, and Grandma pointed her gloved hand and said, wipe. And so I got the toilet paper, very rough, single ply. And I looked at it. And I looked at my grandma. Grandma, I can't. She said, why not, baby? You know how to wipe yourself. I said, but Grandma, and I just lifted up the dresser the rest of the way and pointed, and she kind of inhaled, and she took out that hanky, and she ran cold water on it, and she took care of that business herself. And she put the hanky back in her purse, a wet hanky that she had used to wipe my little backside. But she said, we're not going to worry about those panties, baby. She pulled down the slips that were underneath my dress, and she yanked down the dress so that it was hanging lower than it had been. And she said, we got to keep that down. We don't want to reveal your treasures. I said, yes, ma'am. And when we get back upstairs, I hear the music. Don't you start jumping. Don't you start dancing. And you walk like you're walking into a wedding or a funeral. You know, when you were the little flower girl, you know how you had to walk her, so you do that. You do that. I said, yes, ma'am. So back up the stairs we went, and I was holding on to both sides of my dress. And Grandma Jo had her hand on my shoulder. And when we got upstairs, I walked very slowly. But it felt so good to walk like a cowboy. Have you ever felt so good that you felt like your butt was sighing? Oh, it felt so good. And when we got to Grandma Jo's pew, I sat down on that cold wood. And I didn't get up. I didn't jump. I didn't dance. And nothing was said. But Grandma Jo waited until we were about the last people coming out of the church, because she didn't want anybody to notice what wasn't there. She didn't want me to reveal my treasures. I didn't know what my treasures were, but I was not going to reveal them to anyone. When we got home, she had a talk with my mother, and I knew that I was in trouble. I knew I was probably going to get fussed at. I might get a spanking. I didn't know what was going to happen. But Grandma Jo just handed my mother those panties. And she patted me on the shoulder. She said, everything's all right. And I didn't get fussed at. And I didn't get in trouble. Did get a lot of Vaseline in a certain part of my anatomy, but I didn't get yelled at for anything. And the next day, my sister, my little sister, and I were sent over to my great aunt Kat, who lived right next door, while Grandma Jo and my mother went somewhere. And they came back with a long, narrow box. And Grandma Jo said, this is a gift for you. And I opened it up. And there was the answer to my torment. Grandma Jo was my saving grace, because she had bought me a dozen pairs of white cotton panties with no elastic anywhere. She had saved me, and she might have saved me from my mother for what I had done when I was dancing and lost my torment on the church floor. But I figured it would be all right anyway, because I was taught that kith and kin watch over all the little ones, just the same way God does. God watches over babies and fools. God also has a sense of humor, so I think he wouldn't mind. And I think he would laugh when he heard a child say, lead us not into Penn Station and deliver us from email. Amen.
Thank you so much, Lyn. Oh my goodness. Lyn was marvelous. Our next teller is Liz Weir. I have 3 words for her and a beautiful heart that has her name written all over it. Liz, magical. Do you agree? Vibrant. Magnetic. Welcome to the stage, Liz. Liz, I'm going to put your heart right here. Oh, you're going to sit on the chair? Okay, I'm going to.
Thank you.
You want to hold it? You want me to hold it?
I've decided to sit down. This is my last couple of stories, and my energy's not so good today, so I'm going to do the best I can. Is that all right? Where's my other stool? Ooh. Thank you. Cheers. I haven't used the water, but it's there if I need it anyway. I'm going to tell you 2 stories. It's such a pleasure to be here because an audience makes an event, and to have you as such an attentive audience is, I think it's really important. Anyway, a story from Scotland first. I live in the top northeast corner of Ireland. It's only 14 miles across to Scotland from the coast. I'm 5 miles from the coast. So we can see Scotland on a good day. So the stories, like the people, have crossed backwards and forwards. There was once a beekeeper, and people said the reason that the honey from his bees was so good was his relationship with those bees. People know, I hope you know, about people telling the bees. If a beekeeper dies, you have to go out and tell the bees. But this beekeeper spent a lot of time out round his hives talking. One day he was out at his beehives when he heard a terrible commotion. He heard dogs baying, and he looked out, and coming across the field beside him was a pack of dogs chasing something white. He thought the odds weren't great, so he picked up a stick and he went to his gate and he lifted his stick to drive off these dogs, and he opened his coat and the white thing shot inside his coat and he beat the dogs off, and off they went with angry eyes. He carried this creature into the house and he set it down, and it was a hare, a beautiful white hare with piercing blue eyes. He left the door open in case it wanted to go out. He set down water, he set down some food, but the hare stayed. He was a lonely man, and he found the hare good company. And day followed day, and about 3 days later, there was a knock at the door. And he went to the door, and there was an old woman in a shawl with really evil-looking eyes, as angry as those dogs had had. And she said, "What will you take for that hare?" Said the hare, "How much do you want for it?" He said, "Well, the hare doesn't belong to me. The hare is not for sale. I'll pay you good money." He said, "Go away. The hare is not for sale." And she went away furious. Well, he and the hare had a good sort of relationship. He set out food, she ate it. Company for a lonely man. The next day, he was out tending his bees, and he saw a whole procession of travellers coming past, caravans, carts, horse-drawn carts. And as the last cart passed his house, something fell off. So when he finished his work, he went out to the road, and there was a sack of corn. And he thought, if I don't return this, a horse will go hungry tonight. So he knew the way of these travelling people, and he knew where they would camp for the night. So he put the hare under his coat. He wasn't going to leave her in case the woman came back. He got on his horse. He had the sack of corn behind him, and off they headed. And when he came to the traveller encampment, a young traveller man came and said, "What do you want here?" They were very suspicious of country people, as they call settled people. And the young man said, "I brought a sack of corn, you left it, and I didn't want a horse to go hungry." "Huh, why would you do that for us?" He said, "I was thinking of the horse." But the man was looking inside his coat, and he could see this white thing. He said, "What's that?" "It's a hare." "Ha, hares aren't white. This hare is white." Grandmother, come." And from the depths of a caravan, a very, very old woman came. And she hobbled across. "Grandmother, look at this." He brought out the hair and she looked at it and she said, that's not a hair. That is a young woman under enchantment. She's been enchanted by a witch. The young man said, is there any way to break the spell? Well, she said, yes. Tomorrow night is the full moon. And she took a silken scarf from under her cloak and she said, take this. First of all, go home and talk to your bees. They'll help you. Take this scarf, take the hair as far away as you can get before the moon rises. Tie this silken scarf around her neck, and no matter what, don't let go of her. Well, the young man didn't know what was going on, but he thanked the old woman, and he came back, and he went and talked to his bees. I have no idea what he said to them. Then he got the hair, he put the silken scarf around her neck, and they travelled far, 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 way across the moors. And they waited, and the moon started to rise up. But as it did, the hair started to pull and struggle, and he held on to her tightly, tightly. It was a battle that went on for about an hour until both of them were exhausted, and they fell asleep. When he woke up the next morning, there was no hair beside him. There was a beautiful young woman with long white hair and piercing blue eyes. Hello, he said. Hello, she said. He said, would you like to come home with me? She said, I would. So he put her on the back of his horse and they headed away back over the moors. And when they got near home, there was another young man who said, beekeeper, beekeeper, did you hear the news last night? No, what happened? They say an old witch was found, dead on the moor. They say that she was stung to death by bees. And the beekeeper said, I was away. I wouldn't know anything about that. I like good honey, do you not? Good organic honey. Last story of this festival. It's been such a pleasure to be here. Such a pleasure. Which story will I tell? Will I tell this one? Oh, I know what I'll tell. Yeah. Up off the coast of Northern Ireland, between a town called Ballycastle and Rathlin Island. They say once every 7 years, an enchanted island emerges from the sea. I think they call it a Fata, F-A-T-A, Morgana. It's an illusion. That's the story. This story, by the way, was told to me as a true story. There was a young woman called Annie who lived in a house up one of the glens up Glenchesk, and she had 6 brothers and sisters. The mother had died, the cottage was small. It was a terrible life. She was a drudge. And she said to her father, look, I can earn more money if I go and get hired out. That'll give you more money. My sisters can look after the wee ones. And so he agreed. So she went with her bundle under her arm, and she stood in the market square in Ballycastle, and she waited for somebody to hire her. She waited all day. Nobody was hiring her. And then, towards the end of the fair, a tall man in a tall black hat and a bright green coat came, and he pointed. Are you for the hiring? I am, sir. Would you stay with me for 2 years? Normally it's 6 months. And then she thought of what she'd left, the crying babies, the nappies, the drudgery. And she said, would you be good to me, sir? He said it would. Very well. The bargain was made. He led her out of the town and he said, you will find this strange, but I must blindfold you. We have a journey to go on. Very unusual. There was a horse and a cart. He put a blindfold on her. He lifted her up in the cart, excuse me. And it was as if they were flying through the air. She felt the breeze going past her. Then she heard seabirds and she thought, we're out over the sea. Are we going to Rathlin? Where are we going? And the next thing, the cart put down and he lifted her off, took off the blindfold, and she was somewhere surrounded by mist. And he led her to his house, big gentleman's residence. He said, there's only you and me here. Anything you want, ask me. But keep yourself to yourself. Anything you need, I will provide for you. There's good food. And he was kind. The food was good, plenty of clothes. If she needed anything, all she had to do was ask. But it was lonely. She wandered around and the island was wreathed in mist a lot of the time. And sometimes she'd hear voices at night, but she knew better than to go down. And she got a bit lonely for home. And when the 2 years was up, he came to her and he said, will you stay for another 2 years? She said, no, sir, I must go home. I must take money back to my family. So again, he blindfolded her. He put her up in the cart and they flew through the air until he landed back in the town of Ballycastle. And he said to her, Annie, if you see me again, pretend you've never seen me before. You don't know me. Yes, sir. That was rather strange. So he paid her. She went home. The family were delighted to see her. But if anything, do you know, it was worse. Because the eldest sister had married. She'd had a baby, other mouths to feed. And she thought, why did I leave my master? I'm going to go back to the hiring fair when the 6 months comes round. And that's what she did. She went back and she stood there and stood there and stood there. At the end of the day, she thought, well, he's not coming. And then she saw him coming down, carrying the green coat over his arm. She stepped forward. She said, sir, it's me, Annie. He glared at her. Can you see me? She said, of course, sir, you're my master. And with that, he lifted the sleeve of his coat and he hit her up the face. And he blinded her. Annie went back up to the house. There was no more hiring for her. She lived her days in Glenchesk. And I can tell you this story because I know a man whose father knew that old woman. And he told the story to him, and my friend told the story to me. Thank you very much for your listening. Thank you.
You know, Ronnie and Bobby, they're retired and they come here every year to help us set up, and the unbelievable music and fantastic acoustics, speakers and sound system. Only they have gone above and beyond when it comes to making sure that we have the best sound ever. And they're just gentlemen. Thank you. Joyful noise. Yes. And what magic we've heard so far, these two women, oh my goodness. Going on with my next heart, which I love. It looks like ocean waves are involved with this one. I'll be introducing to you all Alton Chung. These are his 3 magical words that came to me. Compelling, do you agree? Oh, captivating and resonant. Alton, you have the stage. Would you like me to aloha.
Not once, not twice, but thrice upon a time, there was a couple. Oh, they were so much in love, but as all newlyweds, they had a hard time making ends meet. And last, the husband said, my dear wife, I'm going to go travel far, I'm going to find a job, and I'm going to make enough money so that you can live in the lifestyle you should become accustomed to. I don't know how long I'm going to be gone. All I ask is that you be true to me. You be faithful to me, I'll be faithful to you. Well, she loved him, so she agreed. The next morning he took off. He walked and he walked and he walked and walked. He finally found a job in a far town as a manservant to a very wealthy man. Now, this wealthy man made him an offer. He said that he would pay him, if he worked for him for 20 years, he would take care of all of his expenses. At the end of that time, he would pay him the entire amount of money that he had earned in those 20 years in one lump sum. The man agreed. Now, this man happened to be a very wise man. The people came from miles around to ask for his advice and pay handsomely for that privilege. And this young man, he took care of the house, he did the cooking, the cleaning, he took care of his master's needs. He also ushered the clients in to see him. He took care of all the accounting. He was very good at his job. And 20 years went by. And now it came time for him to go. And he began packing up his belongings, and his master paid him 300 gold pieces, a fortune. And he was very happy. He began packing things up, and his master said, well, aren't you going to ask me for my advice? I mean, after all, you spent 20 years bringing people in who wanted to go and ask for my advice. Well, he didn't want to offend his master. He said, yes, master, please, give me your words of advice. I will have 3 pieces of advice for you, my young good man, for my normal fee. He blanched. His normal master's fee was 300 gold pieces. He was trapped. He said, all right, master, what is your first piece of advice for me? Aha! Well, first, my fee. Thank you very much. Now, my first piece of advice for you, my young man, is this. Do not go home. Do not take a new road home. Do not take a new road home. Go back the way that you had come on the old road. What? Go back the way that I came on the old new road? I mean, I paid 300 gold pieces for this? Yes, you did, and because of that, you'll probably remember it a lot more. All right, master. What is your second piece of advice? My second piece of advice, my good man. Well, first, my fee. Thank you very much. Now, my second piece of advice for you, my good man, is this. Do not meddle in other people's affairs. Let people lead their own lives. What? I could have gotten that from the soothsayer down the road for almost nothing. Yes, you could have, but now you remember it all the more. Yes, do not meddle in other people's affairs. All right, master. What is your third piece of advice? My third piece of advice, my long-suffering servant, is this. But first, my fee. Thank you very much. Now, my last piece of advice for you is this. Save your anger for another day. Save my anger for another day? Oh, he packed his things. He was ready to go. No, my dear, but I cannot let you go and home empty-handed. No, please. For you, I have baked a cake, and I also have 2 loaves of bread to sustain you on your journey home. And so the servant, calling upon all his years of service, picked up the heavy box of the cake, put it in his pack, put the 2 loaves of bread in his pack, put it on his, and he thanked his master, and he left. He walked out of that town as poor as the day that he walked in 20 years before. 20 years, and all I've got is 2 loaves of bread and a cake. Oh, well, he fell in step with some other travelers, and these travelers are kind. I mean, there were good stories, good songs, and jokes and conversations, and he took out his first loaf of bread, and he shared it with them, and everyone was quite happy, and they were jovial, and he felt much lighter. And then they came to a fork in the road. Now, the old road wound around through the foothills and eventually ended up at this town. The shortcut went up into the foothills and then arrived at the town, the same town, but much sooner. Now, all the travelers were going to go up, take the high road, because there was a spring up there with the water was supposed to be the sweetest water in the whole area, and you got a beautiful view of the entire area. And they asked the young man to go along with him, the servant, and he was about to say yes when into his ear came his master's words. Do not take the new road home. Stay with the old one. I spent 100 gold pieces for this. I might as well take it. So he thanked the friend. He said, save me a place at the tavern tonight. I will take the old road and I'll eventually get there. So off they went. They parted company. And he walked, and soon it was dark by the time he reached the town. And when he walked into the tavern was abuzz. There seemed to have been some murders. Some travelers were killed up in the high road near the spring. I thought, oh, my master. If I had taken my master's advice, I could be amongst the murderers. Oh, please bless them, bless their souls, and bless my master, who is indeed the wisest man there is. That his advice was worth 100 gold pieces, even more. Well, next morning he got up and he headed off. And he walked, and soon the sun started going down, and he entered into a dark wood. And he kept walking, and soon the sun started going down, and in that gloaming, he was stumbling over the roots in the trail, trying to find his way. He could not stop. There was no other way. He had to keep going, and at last it was dark, and he was fumbling, feeling his way, and all of a sudden, out in the distance, he saw a dim glow. He had no choice. He walked toward it. It was lantern shine, light coming out of the small window of a cabin in the middle of the woods. There's no place else to go. He walked up and he felt a little unsettled. But he went and knocked on the door. Doors opened by a gigantic man with a full beard, wild hair, and he glowered at the servant. Then he stepped aside, motioned inward. The servant went in. There was a table, 2 chairs, and the big pot of stew on the hearth. That man, he got a bowl, he filled it up with stew, put a spoon in it, gave it to the servant. He filled up another bowl, put a spoon in it. He sat down. He sat down and began eating. It was maybe pork. It was an interesting, odd taste to it. And the servant took out his second loaf of bread, broke it in half, and gave half of it to his host. And host grunted at him and thanks, and they continued to eat, and they ate. And then he got down to the bottom of his bowl, and he noticed a strange, odd-looking piece of meat in the bottom of his bowl, and he stared at it, and you see, it looked like a finger. He looked at his host. His host was glowering at him and had all 10 of his fingers. And he looked around the room for the last, and there he saw, up on the shelf, a human skull grinning back at him. He looked back at his host. His host is staring at him. Took off a piece of bread and covered over the offending digit and put his bowl away. And he was looking about, and all of a sudden he heard this boom, boom, boom. He almost jumped out of his chair. This thud came out from beneath the floor. The man stood up. He walked over the corner, unlatched a trap door and opened it up, and out came this woman. She was once beautiful, but now she was old. That old man, he went over to that pot. He picked up the skull, took the top of it. He saw it was fashioned into a bowl. He put some of the stew in that, stuck a spoon in it, and handed it to this woman. And she ate. And then when she was done, she handed the bowl back and continued and went back down, half stumbling into her subterranean prison. And he slammed the trapdoor shut and closed it. And he looked at the servant and said, "What do you think of that?" He said, I think he was about to give this man the tongue lashing that he deserved, when all of a sudden in his ear he heard his master's voice, "Do not meddle in other people's affairs. Leave people to allow them to lead their own lives." And he said, I think that you must have a really good reason for doing what you're doing. A sensible answer. Yes, I do. That woman was my wife. She took a lover behind my back, and I caught them. Now she eats her dinner out of his skull. I do not forgive. Now, what do you think of that? I think you're doing the very best that you can. An excellent answer. You may be one of the few people who have survived my hospitality. Those who disagree with me end up in the pot. But you have nothing to fear. There's a cot in there and a blanket. Pleasant dreams. And he stormed off down the hallway, got into his bedroom, slammed the door shut. The servant lay there in bed with the thin blanket over him, thinking, "Oh my God, do not meddle in other people's affairs. Do not meddle in other people's affairs. Oh." And he stayed awake all night until the cold fingers of dawn came through that window, and he carefully gathered up his things and quietly he slipped out the door and was down the trail before he could say, "Lady fingers." Well, he was down there and he began walking and walking. All of a sudden he began hearing the sights and sounds that were familiar to him. And he exited the woods and he could see the town. But by that time the sun was hanging low on the horizon. He made his way to town. He walked down the familiar streets and he got to his own house. By that time it was dark, but he could see light coming out of the windows of his house. And he stood by the windows and looked in. Oh, there were a lot of people. He could see his wife, his beautiful wife. She was a little older now, but still quite lovely. And his heart, ached for her. And then he noticed there's a lot of people in his house. And then there were musicians, and they started playing music. And his wife stood up from a chair, walked over to a handsome young man who stood up, and they kissed, and they danced. Anger roiled up in his breast. I've been faithful for over 20 years, and I only asked for her to be faithful to me, and now she's taken a younger lover. I'll kill him. And he pulled out his dagger, and the moonlight glistened off its razor-sharp edge. He was about ready to burst in there and murder them all, when all of a sudden his master's voice came into his mind. "Save your anger for another day." He put his dagger back, and she said, "I'll kill them all tomorrow." And he ran out of town, ran into the woods, and he slept under a bush that night. His intention was to get up at dawn and go and kill them all, but because he didn't really sleep the night before, he kind of slept until dawn, and way past dawn and into like almost noon the next day. And he woke up with murder in his heart, and he began marching toward the village when he happened outside of the village to run into an old neighbor. And he looked, oh, I don't believe it. Oh, my goodness. Your wife will be so happy to see you. And, oh, do you not know? Yesterday, she was so proud. Your son has now been ordained as a priest, and they were celebrating it. Oh, she danced with him all night long. My son? I have a son? Oh, I could have killed both my son and my wife. Oh, my master is indeed the wisest man there is. Oh, he grabbed that neighbor's hand. He shook it. He was so happy. And he ran all the way into town. He ran to his door, and he began hammering on the door. And the door was answered by his wife. And there was a moment of confusion, and then shouts of joy. They fell into each other's arms. Oh, there was talk, and there was all kinds of celebration. More people came. Oh, there's another big celebration. They're going to have a great party. And then they sat down. He was introduced to his son. Oh, he was so happy. And he pulled and said, oh, no, wait. I was given a gift by my master. And he said that I have a cake, and he said, I should enjoy it when I'm the happiest. And right now, I am the happiest with you, my darling. And he opened up that box. He put it on the table. He lifted up that crate. It was a beautiful cake. He flourished his dagger high above the air, and he sliced into the cake. And when he did, gold coins began rolling across the table. And when they counted them, there was exactly 300 gold pieces, and not a penny less.
Mahalo, my goodness, that was wonderful. We have one more teller. My goodness. I know Alton and all of them are so appreciative to Libby here and to Joel. My goodness. We get all kinds of stories. We get the stories from the mouth and the stories from the signs. They both reach us in our heart and our mind. Thank you both so much. Joel, Ben, Izzy, 3 words to describe Joel. And of course, you know, all these words are just interwoven between all of these 4 fabulous tellers. But the ones that came to me for Joel are engaging, passionate, heartfelt. How about a hand for Joel?
Time to bring this festival home. What a festival it's been, and what a delight in so many ways. But one particular delight that I've been noticing is when you're telling stories here, you're in the on-deck circle. So what you get to do is you get to watch the teller right next to Joel and Libby. Joel or Libby. And so, and I've told stories at many festivals before, but there's a real delight in the engagement of the ASL interpretation here. Sometimes it feels like a distraction, something separate, far away, that's just for deaf people. Here it feels like the way Libby's done it, and I'm going to make her blush as I say, the way Libby's done it has been so beautiful, and the way Joel has done it, and it's always hit a particular chime to it. It's lovely. And I suppose by watching hands, I start to think about hands. I have a string of little stories to bring us back home here. And for some reason, the story that came to mind was a story from England of a pickpocket. Long ago in England, there was a pickpocket. This was a very skilled pickpocket. This was the kind of pickpocket who could come, pick your pocket, take out the money, put the money wallet back. You think you had spent the money. He was good, but he lived in a small town, and he said, I can't make a living in a small town, because people would see him and just cross the street to avoid him. So he went off to London, actually to the big city, to Piccadilly Circus, which is a perfect place for a pickpocket to pick a peck of pockets. And he picked a peck of pockets. He was doing quite well. And at the end of one day, he developed quite a lot of money. As he was going home, though, he realized his own wallet was missing. And he saw a woman walking away. She just walked past him. He realized she must have picked his pocket. And he hastened to meet her. He said, ma'am, I'd like my wallet back, please. She said, what? And sure enough, I'm a pickpocket, you're a pickpocket. She was. She'd taken his wallet. Turned out she was also a skilled pickpocket. In fact, he was one of the two greatest pickpockets in the world. She was the other greatest pickpocket in the world. They went into business together picking a peck of pockets. They picked a lot of pockets. They did quite well. And over time, these pickpockets fell in love. Your line is, they fell in love, they were married, and before long, the pickpockets were pregnant. Now, there was a lot of excitement about this baby. Right? And excitement about any baby. But in this case, there was the thought he was one of the two greatest pickpockets in the world. She was the other. Think of what kind of a pickpocket that baby could be. But when the baby was born, it was a difficult delivery. The midwife struggled, and when the baby was born, its arm like this. I mean, it was healthy in every other way, but its arm was like this. Of course, to be a pickpocket, you need to be inconspicuous, and that hope was crushed. Well, they raised him, they loved him, but they also took him from doctor to doctor to doctor to see what they could do. And no doctor in England had an answer, so they went across finally to France. And in France, they met a doctor who said, let us examine the baby, huh? And the doctor held out a watch for the baby. The baby's hand began to shake. And as the baby's hand began to shake, it moved. And it was for the first time they saw movement. And that little baby's arm reached for that watch. The parents were thrilled. And as it opened up its hand to grab that watch, out fell the midwife's wedding ring. Now, I suppose that story came to mind, and you know me enough to know I always like the stories that are somewhere between reality and folklore. I suppose that story came to mind because of a story. It started with a hand. I told you the other day about a boy named Pacifique. Pacifique in Rwanda. This morning I woke to an email. Joyful news. Pacifique is now Papa. And Julienne is a mama. The baby was born by C-section because it was 10¼ pounds. A big baby. They are healthy. The baby was born just as I was telling you that story on Friday morning. And this baby is named Milo. Milo Vicky. Vicky for victory. Milo. And they sent a picture. I printed it out, so it's back there by my books and CDs. You can see babies healthy and coming into a world loved. And that is so healing for me to think. My wife and I had gone to Rwanda. We went to the Genocide Museum. As Jews, of course, we know the Holocaust, the Shoah, and learning about the way they looked at it, and the way that in this beautiful museum, if you ever go to Kigali, they really examined all the different genocides in the world, and to see the way they've made peace. And this child born in the shadow of war is now in this land which is called the land of 1,000 hills. In Rwanda, they say, during the day, God travels elsewhere, but at night, God sleeps in Rwanda. And to think that there is a baby being born to two parents who are so loving. And I thank those of you who bought CDs and those of you who donated during my session to give some gift. That money's all going to help this baby and to ensure that baby's future. Milo is the name. And I think of all this with just the joy of the healing that can come. And then I turn my gaze back to our country and think about the healing we need. And I turn my gaze to the Middle East and think about the healing need doing. And I turn my gaze to our really skillful sign language interpreters who interpret with their hands, their face, and their heart. And there's a story I wanted to share with the two of you that I don't know if you heard before. I asked you about it, but I don't know that you'd heard it. And I don't know if you heard this, Maria, but I think you'll all appreciate it. I was invited to tell stories at the California School of the Deaf in Fremont, California. It's a wonderful school, and it wasn't for the student body, but it was a birthday of the principal there, who's hearing but also fully literate in sign. And afterwards, we sat around telling stories, and they told a story from the Civil War. And of course, I live in California, Berkeley, California. I'm down here south. The Civil War, Juneteenth. I know some about it, but people here know much more about it. But the story that they told was of a soldier in the North who was deaf, and he was swept off to war, as was everybody. And he was swept off to war in this battalion, fighting just in the middle of this chaos and confusion with no understanding. Why are we doing this? Why are we fighting? No one to talk to, and though he couldn't hear, the noise was deafening of just the sheer chaos and confusion. And one night after a horrible battle, he just had to get away to find some peace and some quiet. And he went to a clearing in the woods and just rested with his gun at his side. And as he rested, what did he see? But motion in the woods, and coming towards him was a Confederate soldier walking towards him. And he did what he'd been taught to do. He lifted his gun, and the Confederate soldier said, "No, don't shoot." He said, "What?" And the Confederate soldier said again, was the only deaf person he'd met in the entire war. And he put down the gun, and the two started talking. And sure enough, this soldier from the South had also felt just the same, lost and alone, and the two sat there talking to each other all night long. And as the sun rose, their battalions came upon them. And they thought they were spies. They were going to hang them, but they realized, no, they were just deaf sharing their stories. When they finally understood this, these two groups of soldiers realized they were facing each other, the North and the South, in this clearing around these two deaf soldiers. And they looked across, and they simply could not fight with one another. They simply parted and agreed not to do battle that day. Well, word of this battle that didn't happen spread up through the ranks, and it got all the way to Abraham Lincoln. And as Lincoln heard this, he had just been presented with a proposal for the charter of Gallaudet College, the college for the deaf in D.C. And this was the Civil War. There was no money. But he thought of this story, and he thought, I think there's something we can learn from those who speak with their hands. Maybe we can learn peace. And he signed the charter. And Abraham Lincoln has long been beloved by the deaf and hard of hearing community. And Gallaudet continues to be a phenomenal university, rich in so many ways. And what they say when they tell the story is this: that the sculptor who made the Lincoln Monument had also made a sculptor at Gallaudet College of Gallaudet and had learned some sign language. So if you look at Lincoln's hands, one is like this, A. One is like this, L. Abraham Lincoln. Now, that last part's apocryphal. That's not actually why he is there. I mean, one hand is a fist, and one hand is open to show strength and compassion. They're molded from Lincoln's actual hands that he had done that. But here's what I do know is true. The heart is a muscle the size of a fist, really two fists together. And the challenge is this. You come to a festival like this, and the heart opens. This festival has welcomed us tellers with open hearts from long before we got here. Right? Sue wrote and said, we are huggers here in Denton, Texas, and at the Tejas Festival. We are open-hearted. And yet, as the festival ends, we go out in the world, and we face the challenge, how do we keep our heart open? Because we don't want to close our heart off. And yet it's a world out there that's not quite like the world we've had here, so open with warmth and compassion. So I'll share just a little lesson that I got from Krista Tippett, who you might know in the On Being podcast. She interviews a lot of philosophers, religious leaders, and she talked about going to Plum Village in France. Thich Nhat Hanh, the famous Vietnamese monk, Thich Nhat Hanh had been left Vietnam and was looking for a place to found his monastery. And when he found it, in France, he was looking for a piece of land. There was a big piece of land available, and it looked like nice land. And they said he wanted to buy it, and they said, you don't want your monastery here. Because this is the field where they took all the people in the villages who were even suspected of collaborating with the Germans, and they lined them up and shot them. This field literally ran with blood. Nobody will buy it. And Thich Nhat Hanh said, this is exactly where I want my monastery. This is where we need to make peace. And so she said she went to a meditation retreat there. And at the beginning of the meditation retreat, they said, you are here to open your heart. How? Do this, and let me invite you all to do this. Make a fist with your hand, the letter A in sign language, but a fist like this. With your other hand now, try to pull that open. Try to open that fist. And you'll see it doesn't happen. In fact, the harder you pull, the tighter the fist holds. Now, said the monk, take that other hand and hold it under the fist. And you'll feel it start to open. That's what we have to do. And in our hand, we have treasures. That baby had a wedding ring. Pacifique had a loss that taught him compassion. Taught him compassion will make him a great dad. And we have stories. And we hold the stories in our hands, we open it, we share it, and then those stories hold us, and we hold each other. So we do something here over the course of a few days that ripples out and hopefully brings healing to a world that much needs it. And I only hope and pray that the world can find the kind of peace, the kind of connection, the kind of compassion that we see exhibited in your community, the stories you share, the tellers that came, our sign language interpreters, and may we find peace in this world. It's in our hands. Thank you.
And here we'll be. Remember, storytellers are the memory keepers. And in the great words of the great late Dame Vera Lynn, we'll meet again. Don't know where, don't know when. We'll meet again some sunny day. Everybody, please, if you can, stand. Link your arms.
Sway back and forth, y'all. Get those hips moving. Happy trails to you till we meet again. Thank you all so much. Hey, y'all be safe going home. And you let me know you got home okay, all right? Y'all come back now. Here.